Are you thinking about buying a house in the US and you're looking for a bit more information about how to make that happen? Well, you are in the right place, my friend, because today I'm going to be interviewing Pete Johnson, a mortgage lender with GreenState Credit Union here in the greater Iowa City area. So let's get going. Hi there, my name's Emily Farber and I'm a realtor with Lippitt Krager Realtors here in Iowa City, Iowa. I create YouTube videos all about real estate and the greater Iowa City area designed to help people make smart moves when it comes to buying and selling real estate here around Iowa City. If you're thinking about making a big international move, you probably want to grab a copy of my Iowa City area relocation guide. I'll leave a link for that down below in the description box of this video. If you're watching on your phone, all you need to do is tap the title of this video and that description box will open right up. I'll also leave the contact information for Pete Johnson down there in case you want to talk to him about your specific needs when it comes to financing your U.S. home purchase. You'll also find all of my contact information down there also. That way, when you are ready to get serious about looking for your sweet home, Iowa City home, you'll know who to talk to. Did you know that anybody can buy property in the United States regardless of citizenship? It's true. Obviously, the easiest way to make this happen is with a cash purchase. But if you don't have a pile of cash to show up and purchase your U.S. home, what do? You need to think about financing. So let's talk to Pete Johnson at GreenState Credit Union about a couple of options that could work for you if you want to finance your purchase of a home. All right, well, we're here today with Pete Johnson, a mortgage lender from GreenState Credit Union in Iowa. Hi, Pete. Thanks for joining me today.
You bet.
So I wanted to talk to you about how a foreigner can go about buying property in the United States, because the United States, it does make it available for anybody to purchase property, correct?
That's correct, yep.
So are there a couple of different ways that if somebody wants to purchase a house in the U.S., how do they go about it?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is making sure that you have a valid visa, a valid up-to-date visa that's not expired. I'd go through all of the visa types for you here, but the best thing to do is probably just to submit the visa to me, your lender. Let me take a look at it, and then I'll kind of verify that your visa is accurate. If you're coming to the United States to work, you'll probably have a valid work visa, obviously. That'll be, the paperwork for that will either be submitted by you or by your employer. Most generally, it's submitted by your employer for you, and what you're generally getting is what's called an H-1B visa. Just says you're valid to come here and work. Once you have that, you'll also be issued a social security number. So having the social security number is probably the most crucial part of it. If you're on a visitor visa or you're coming here with a spouse, most likely you'll have a visitor visa and you won't be issued a social security number, which authorizes you to work in the United States. That's probably the biggest thing, the biggest challenge to kind of overcome is that part of it. Once you have the social security number, the other challenge that you'll run into is that you probably haven't established any credit yet. So the second most important thing would be to try to get, once you get into the United States, you have your social security number issued. The best thing you can do is probably get a credit card, apply for a credit card. Even if you don't use it, you don't have to run it up, of course. But get a credit card or maybe a vehicle loan. If you need a vehicle to get to and from work, you're probably doing that anyway. That's what's going to establish credit for you so that we can populate a credit score in the United States. That's the most important. Yeah.
Sorry. How long does it take for somebody to establish U.S. credit? What's the length of time that would take?
Generally not too long. I've seen credit scores populate immediately with a credit card that's been in use for maybe 30 days or so. I'd say typically at least 30 to 45 days. 60 to 90 days is better, but I've seen people that have come into the country have only been here maybe 2 or 3 weeks and have started using 1 or 2 credit cards, and you might have a good credit score right off the bat. A good credit score we're talking about is generally anything in kind of the high 600s. If we can get you to maybe a 660, 670 or higher, 740 is the magic number, but it might take you a little while to establish that kind of credit.
What if somebody wants to purchase a house right away? They don't have credit. They want to come on over on the airplane and move right into a house. What are their options then?
Yeah, we have some programs for that. So you can kind of expect that most likely if you don't have any credit established, that's okay. We actually have loan programs that will allow you to buy a house without an established credit score. You do still need the social security number, of course. But if you have that and have not established some credit, that's okay. We'll generally do what's called an in-house loan. This is a loan that we'll keep here at the credit union, as opposed to selling it on what we call the secondary market. You don't really need to know what that is at the present moment. But it's a loan that we keep here at the credit union. The terms of the loan are a little bit more flexible and allow us to do the loan even without a credit score. Now, you can expect your interest rate will probably be a little bit higher, maybe 1 to 1.5% higher than what you're going to see advertised for rates. We'll probably do that type of loan initially, and then ideally over the course of the next 4 to 6 months or so, as your credit gets established, gets better, we'll look to do what's called a refinance. We'll pay off that first loan that we did kind of temporarily just to get you started, and then we'll do a new loan at the better interest rate once that credit's been established.
I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, but how does the home buying process in the United States differ from some other countries in your experience working with international clients?
Yeah, that can vary wildly, just kind of depending on where you're from. Other countries typically use adjustable rate mortgages. They might have loan terms that are as far out as 40 years. In the United States, it's typically a general, 30-year fixed rate loan, a loan that is spread out over 30 years where the rate is locked in for all 30 years. But we do have some ARM loans. Some of those in-house programs are going to be what we call ARMs, or adjustable rate mortgages, where the rate is fixed for a set period of time and then adjustable after that. I can't really speak to the underwriting and the qualifying of loans in other countries necessarily, but in the United States, it's a pretty straightforward process for everybody. It's equal for everybody, so the same rules that apply to you apply to everybody else. In other countries, you'll see kind of a varying degree of how strict underwriters are in terms of approving loans, but in the United States, it's pretty straightforward.
So if a loan is going to be sold on the secondary market, like they're going Freddie or Fannie, there's a lot of rules involved, such as length of U.S. residency and length of U.S. work experience. Do any of those same rules apply if somebody's doing an in-house ARM through GreenState?
Yeah, generally not. So there's no length of residency requirement or length of work history necessarily. Although we do look at work history if you're coming here to work an hourly position or a part-time, which most of the time, if you're moving from another country, you aren't. You're probably working in a general base salary position where you're paid the same amount every month. We can use that income. When we're talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two great big huge mortgage companies, mortgage giants that back all fixed rate loans here in the United States, they do have a lot stricter rules. They generally like to see a 2-year work history, although they're not necessarily restricted to that. The big key is that if you are a salary person versus an hourly person, that's where secondary market may not care that you haven't even started your job yet. You actually don't even need to start your job yet, either for the secondary market loan, the 30-year fixed rate, or the in-house adjustable rate. Typically our in-house loans are adjustable rate loans, or ARMs. So that's kind of the big difference there. You will see some pretty strict regulations if you're self-employed, especially with secondary market. And there's a handful of other things that make it a little bit more difficult to get a secondary market loan when you're new to the country. The biggest thing we already talked about was the credit. It's going to be much more difficult to get a conventional fixed rate loan with no credit than with credit, obviously. But that's where the ARM loan comes in. And again, we do that just to kind of get you through as a temporary loan program until we can maybe convert you to a better term, a 30-year fixed rate, if your plan is to kind of stay in the home long term. So the other thing is that if you're not planning to stay in the house long term, we may never switch out of the in-house program. Typically the in-house rates in a normal market, we're not really in a normal market right now, but typically the in-house rates are actually lower. So it might be a benefit to you if you're coming here on a PhD program or something like that, where you're only going to be here for maybe 2 to 5 years. We may stick with the in-house program anyway because it's better for you. And so that'll just be decided kind of on a case-by-case basis in terms of what your situation is and how long you plan to be here.
So there is no way to translate credit from one country into the equivalent of U.S. credit. It doesn't.
That's true. Yeah, we get asked that a lot. There are some countries, Canada for one, where the credit scoring system in Canada is very, very similar to the United States. In some cases on our in-house loans, we'll use Canadian credit, but that's only because they are so similar. And some of the same companies actually, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, operate in Canada like they do in the United States, although they use different credit requirements. So when you're trying to do the conventional fixed rate loan, they're not going to allow you to use, even in Canada, they're not going to allow you to use that credit scoring model in the United States. So the credit that you have there, you may have great credit in the country where you're at. Unfortunately, we can't generally use that credit here in the United States. We'll be going off of a base no credit score is what we do. We actually sign you a score of 660, for example, in the case of our credit union. We'll start you out at a 660, which is a little bit lower credit score, but not terrible. And then obviously we'll wait until you've established some credit and actually pull a full credit report to get your actual score later as you establish credit. But we're going to start at kind of a baseline there. Unfortunately, we can't use anything that's from other countries that are different. But
okay. How common are international buyers?
Very common. We do a lot. We're a university town here, especially in the Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty area. We have a lot of visiting professors, doctors. We have people coming in on refugee status. We do that a lot. A lot of Sudanese people, a lot of people from Asia coming in for a million different reasons. So it's really common. Iowa City, for being a small town in Iowa, is actually kind of an international place. I've done multiple deals with people from Israel, all over Europe, basically any place, South America, any place you can imagine, we've done it. So it will be very hard to surprise me in terms of where you're coming from. So.
Okay. Are there any special rules or regulations that somebody needs to be aware of when they turn around to sell the house if they've been an international buyer?
Not that I'm aware of. The best thing, the only thing that you might want to consider is tax obligations, both in the country you're from and the United States. That's probably a better question for an accountant. You probably want to get with an accountant and just make sure that when you're buying property here in the United States, especially if you're short term, if you're selling relatively quickly, and you don't plan on being in the United States much more than 2 or 3 years, you probably want to get with your tax professional and just make sure that there aren't going to be any major tax implications when you sell your property and leave the United States.
All right. Well, thanks, Pete. I will put your information down in the description box if anybody wants to get a hold of you to talk about buying a property as an international buyer. You'd be a great resource.
Absolutely. Be happy to help.
Now that you have the basics on how to purchase a home as an international buyer, you probably want to do a bit more research about Iowa City in general. The good news is I have tons of videos designed to help people do just that. So I'm going to leave 2 suggestions for you, and I'll catch you over on either one of those. Hey, it's been fun, and I'll catch you later.